Hello, my name is Nico Parasso. I'm a nurse practitioner student at Westminster College, and I have finishing up my first semester, and it's been really good. I'm also a practicing nurse and have been so for about 4 years now. Um, and this first semester has been really good for us, really good for me. One of the courses that we're taking right now is a nursing theory class, and nursing theory, it's pretty broad. Um, and we watched a film. We watched a film called um, Escape Fire, and it's talking about the American healthcare system in general and some of the problems that we have. But they start the movie off, and it's called Escape Fire because it talks about a tragedy that happened in wildland firefighting, um, and it happened at the Man Gulch fire. And what happened in this fire is um, these firefighters were they're smoke jumpers, and they get caught in a bad situation where the fire's about to overtake them. And so one of the firefighters has the idea to burn back, create an area of black for him to hide in. So there's no more fuels around him that the fire would be super hot that it would kill him. Now this this really struck me because in a past career I actually worked as a forest firefighter. Contemplated smoke jumping, but got married instead. um, but it number one, it was personal for me, so I got to reflect on my past experiences as a firefighter. But also, more importantly, it, I looked at one of the aspects that I loved about firefighting, which was the simplicity of it. Um, you have your goals, you have your team, and not necessarily anything goes, but it's simple, right? There's like this example that they use burning back into the fire. Um, it seemed crazy at the time, but it worked. And like that decision changed how firefighting is taught and understood today. When I was taking my classes to become a firefighter myself, you learn very specifically about Man Gulch and um, how this simple act saved his life, right? And how they were able to make that change. So I love about firefighting is if there's a simpler way, do it. And if there's a more efficient way to do something, then do it as well. And to some aspect, in my current field as a nurse, uh, we have evidence based practice and we do a lot of that stuff. But medicine as a whole, within this country, I think there are aspects that can be looked at and should be looked at. So um, I got into nursing uh, now, and it's been really good. It it was kind of a simple transition for me from firefighter to nursing in the sense of I had a job that I could be proud that I was a public servant to some extent. I was helping people, and that's something that I took great pride in, and I still take great pride in, and that's why I continue to do what I do. And the past 4 years I've been practicing, and I don't always think about what I'm doing. What is nursing? Why am I a nurse? Um, and this class has really made me think about what nursing is, what defines nursing. And my my conclusion is nursing is simply caring for people. Now, I know that's very broad and not specific, but I also think that people are very broad and their needs are very broad, and sometimes they're specific, sometimes not as specific. And so that's why, to me, nursing goes with caring. Um, and caring comes in a variety of different forms based on somebody's need. um, Caring can be the traditional medicine that we think of, maybe a surgery, um, maybe a blood thinner, maybe antidepressant medication, right? But it can also be something like sitting and listening. It can be it can be a sense of community, right? It can be making somebody feel like they belong. It can be a variety of different things because people have a variety of different problems that need to be treated and need to be heard. And an example that we talked about in class that I thought was really interesting was when we were reading um, the Bear and the Silver Scalpel, how Dr. Avlord talks about in her college days and throughout the book, really, how a sense of community is so important to healing, um, and how as important as her work as a surgeon is in the operating room, there's aspects of medicine that are super important that are not being seen. And in the book, she approaches it from her background as both a Navajo and a surgeon. But I think this is one example of many that we can look at, of needs that are not necessarily met that should be met, that can be met. Um, And then I think that nurses are really perfect to meet that need. Um, and to me, I think that's what separates nurses from other healthcare professionals. Other healthcare professionals, they care for their patients. They see their patients. My wife works as an occupational therapist, and she sees patients and she cares for patients. But she's with patients for a very short amount of time. Um, she might, if she sees somebody for an hour, that's a very long visit. As a bedside nurse, I'm there for 12 hours. And so for good or for bad, I get to know that patient. I spend way more time in that room assessing and making decisions and communicating with other members of the team. And so I don't think that nurses are necessarily that they do anything different than other healthcare professionals. I think that they are the best situated to they spend more time with the patient, and because they spend more time with the patient, they're able to find underlying needs um, that might not be seen, that might not be sitting on the surface, or might not be low hanging fruit. And so it's more the depth and the time that the nurses have with their patients that set them apart and allow them to be caregivers, but also very important aspect is the advocacy that nurses um, should provide for their patients and making sure that they get the best treatment that they can. Um, have you have you ever been in a hospital yourself or had a loved one in a hospital? I know that I have personally. I've been in the hospital. I think I've shared with several of my classmates by now that I have a nursing superpower, and that nursing superpower is that I can't smell. And that happened because when I was younger, I hit my head very hard, and um, I had some brain damage. Um, and through that experience that I had being hospitalized, of all the professionals that I had, the doctors that I saw, the therapists that I saw, the CNAs that I saw, and the nurses that I saw, the people that stood out to me that made an impact on my stay were the nurses. And, I would bet that if you think back on your personal experiences within the hospital, I would think that a lot of the people that you remember as well would be nurses. And that's because the role of the nurse is very personal. Um, the nurse builds bridges and has opportunities to build bridges and understand that other professionals don't have. Um, and to me, that's what separates them. Nursing is the glue. You almost have two teams in my head. You have the team that's trying to fix somebody, and then you have the one that needs to be fixed. And in the middle, oftentimes there's more space than there should be. And to fill that space, you have the nurses. Nurses are part of the medical team, obviously, but they're also part of the patient team. And I think that that's really important that they're both. So my my idea on caring, um, it it was very much influenced by some of the people that we talked about and read about in class. Um, I think Florence Nightingale was super instrumental as as a person, and her ideas and thoughts were influential to formulating my own. And the idea of fresh air, pure water, efficient drainage, cleanliness or sanitation, and light as treatments, not just things that exist. And I think in hospitals, when you go to newer hospitals, you're able to see a lot more of these things um, put into the buildings. But for a while there, those are things that medicine didn't consider as therapeutic and didn't really treat. And so I think um, caring can include those things, and it must include those things. Also, there's Hildegard. In God's Hotel, we learn a lot about Hildegard and her idea of veritas, that that nature heals, that your body naturally heals itself, and it's important to provide an environment where the body can heal, where the soul can heal, and almost like a gardener as opposed to a mechanic. And I think that that's super influential, because I think that what creates an environment for someone to feel belonging, and for somebody to feel empowered to heal, to allow their body away from the various stresses that they may have to heal, um, come from that basic idea that influenced my own. And I think nurses are influential in the medical system, but I think that they can be more influential. I think that nurses are the largest percentage of medical health care workers. They, according to the Bureau of or not Land Management, sorry, but according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, um, nursing accounts for 30% of all hospital workers, which is a huge percentage. Think of 30% of anything, right? That's a lot. Um, and the next closest is actually lab technicians, which account for maybe 20%. So even there's a huge difference, 50% more. And as a body, because that is so large, um, I think nurses can influence it in, number one, being the change that we want to see, right? And so I'm talking about caring. I'm talking about providing care. I need to do that as a nurse if I want to see that change. When I walk into a patient's room, I need to establish a connection. I need to listen. I need to to understand what other aspects this my patient needs. Maybe that's spiritual, maybe that's physical. Well, usually it's physical if they're in the hospital. Um, Maybe it's a sense of belonging. Maybe, and maybe sometimes all these people need is to be heard, validation. And so, number one, be the change that we want to see. Number two, I think that it's very important. There are national health organizations, nursing organizations that we can be a part of, and these organizations have lobbyists that fight for the change that we want to see. And so I think it's important to um, be engaged in the change that we want to see. Um, I personally think that our healthcare needs change. I think that um, we need to expand who is able to get health care, as well as we need to expand the ideology of our bodies are not just machines, and that we need to treat human beings as well as human bodies. And I think that that's important, and that's a change that I strive to make in my personal um, my personal work, and I hope that I can make a bigger change as a provider in the future, and just by being vocal about my role as a nurse and how I think nursing can be and how influential that can be towards healing. Thank you.